Alrighty, folks. So here we are. I think about half a year ago, I made a video about Netflix and some controversy that they were having about some TV shows and some movies that they were going to be putting out. Um, a movie called Girl was one of the things that we discussed, and back then, people didn't really know too much about it. There were people that had seen it at a film festival. There were people that were saying good things about it, and there were people that were saying not so good things about it. And this is a video where I'm going to talk about this movie before watching it. I have not watched it yet. And then I'm going to make a second video where I talk about the movie after watching it and see if my opinions and my expectations and my feelings about the subject matter or the way in which it was covered in the media change at all. So uh, heads up, full disclosure, this is your opportunity to, this is your stop. If you're bothered by this content, if this makes you uncomfortable, it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm trying to get through this so that I can be more well-rounded as a person. But yeah, if this is not your thing, then yeah, close out of this video, do something else. But we're going to dive into this and we're going to discuss pretty much everything. So here goes. This is a film by Lucas Dohont. I'm probably butchering that name, but it's a foreign film. And one of the things that I've noticed about foreign films, because I've watched quite a few of them recently, is that they deal with really emotionally and psychologically intense subjects, and um, they often steer right into it. So in American television, there's lots of violence. There's blood and guts and gore and people being murdered and killed and explosions and Michael Bay partnerships with Pepsi and Coca-Cola advertisements. You get the idea. So like that's American television. That's like our thing. What we don't do in the States very well is like nudity at all because that's a hard R. And in other countries, it's kind of different. Like you can have a film that's a foreign film and it has no violence at all and some sensuality, some nudity, but like the pacing of it makes it so that it's really intense and really visceral and makes you feel things. Um, Lars von Trier and Nicholas Winding Refn, and again, I apologize for saying those two people's names in the same sentence because they're mortal enemies like Long Cat and Technical. They are really good at making you feel things, and they would both argue that uh, if their product, their thing that they make, does not cause you to have some kind of emotional response, positive or negative, then they would both agree that they have failed in their endeavor to bring this thing to you, whether it's a movie or a TV show, what have you. So, with that in mind, feeling things is okay. And merely reading about this movie made me feel uncomfortable. And I want to talk about that for a second. So this here, what you're looking at is the actual uh, website. Now, when you start the movie on Netflix, they give you this disclaimer, and they link to this site, and this site has various resources you can reach out to. It has various disclaimers. It has a listing of the awards. Basically, they're ticking all the boxes. They're covering all their bases legally, so that they can say, all right, hey, if you feel some type of way and you need help, there's a way to get help, and I'm all for that. But as someone who is already anxious about watching a movie like this because it deals with bullying of a trans person, because it deals with dysphoria and gender identity and orientation and questions of like a human being trying to find their place in the world and not readily fitting into a neat little box. This, right off the bat, without knowing anything else about the movie, made me think maybe I shouldn't watch this right away. Maybe I should watch this, at night when I'm alone and I have time to like reflect on it and stare longingly at a fireplace through a half-filled glass of Merlot, something like that where I can decompress afterwards, not in the morning where I have to go to work or school or what have you. So I feel things about this. Uh, Again, haven't seen it yet. Plan to see it. This is the before video. I think that all the media coverage and the press and the buzz around this film has been kind of over the top. And I say that because one of the biggest things that they were talking about a while back when this first was in the news was the idea that it had frontal nudity in it. And that the frontal nudity was the main character who is underage, and people felt some type of way about that. And while I agree that it's not the best, it's not something you want to jump forward towards if you're making a film or a TV show. It shouldn't be like a thing on your list of things that you're trying to hit. Like, oh, we need this character to do this, so we need to have this item or this motif somewhere. We need to have this lighting style, and oh, we need to have somebody's genitals. I don't think that that should be your go-to goal. However, if it is essential for the medium and for the content you're creating, I can understand that. There's plenty of I'll use the example of like medical textbooks on various diseases and uh, illnesses. Nobody wants to see that, right? Nobody wants to see a horrible skin condition or a horrible form of cancer like eat away at a person's face or something. But in order to understand that at an academic level or on some kind of very guttural human emotional level, you need to see it. And that's why there's no censorship in medical texts, for example. And this might be a bad example, this might be a good example, depending on how you want to interpret this film. But when you're dealing with foreign films, nudity is actually really common, and it's not this really faux pas, embarrassing thing that it is in the States. There's a lot of films, French films usually, like Blue is the Warmest Color, that there's plenty of nudity. And the nudity is, in some cases, gratuitous, but it's designed to build the character. It's not just like softcore porn, right? It's not like a Cinemax drama, right? It's literally designed to build the characters, and it's used as a vehicle to make you empathize with the situation. An example of an American movie that used nudity in this way was The Ruins, I think it's called, where it's about this group of friends who go to a thing, and there's a plant there, and the plant's like it's killing them or something, right? It's an evil plant, and then they are being killed by this thing. But before you even get to that part, there's a very laid back scene where one of the female characters and male characters is changing, and there's frontal nudity there, but it's frontal nudity in a way that isn't like uh, it isn't licentious or lascivious. It's just like, oh, people are changing. And then my interpretation of that was, oh, I can. This is a person. This is a real person. Not like a real, but you know what I mean. Like I do that. I change into clothes, right? If you have a movie where nobody shits or pisses or is ever changing their clothes, it's just Pleasantville, right? It's not. It's an illusion. It's a fake, made up imaginary space, and it's hard to empathize with. And then later in the film, spoiler alerts, when this character is being like her body is being taken over by these vines, you feel things. Like you feel like, oh shit, like girl, oh that sucks. Like you feel sad and you feel fear and anger and angst about it because this person was humanized earlier in the film, right? So there are good ways to do nudity and there are bad ways to do nudity. And so far in foreign films, it's usually a good way that the adds to the content and the medium rather than distracting from it and being like grotesque. So that's one thing, right? Like people freaking out about nudity and or underage nudity in a movie or TV show are probably limiting their understanding of cinema to a very Western, very American, you know, library, which isn't to say that everyone should just start doing this. Certainly not. There's a whole bunch of legal implications, there's ethical applications. I don't really think that it should be something that people do, but if you, I don't think that you should have to watch some woman eat a dead girl's eyeball. But you know what? In the film Neon Demon, it works. It's disgusting. It's horrible. It's gross. It makes you dry heave, but you know fucking what? That is exactly what you are supposed to be feeling in that moment when she walks over to that eyeball on the floor and looks at it like it's saturator and then just swallows that thing, okay? So just keep that in mind. So moving on from that, the other thing that people were freaking out about this is that it's a cis actor playing a trans person, which, okay, I can totally get why people are upset about that. Blackface used to be a thing. It used to be that if you had a black role, it wasn't played by a black person. It was played by a white person, and that white person, dressed up to look black. I think that I'm not saying that this is trans face or that trans face is even a thing, because let's be real, if trans face is a thing, then RuPaul is like the most guilty person on the planet of it. And RuPaul's Drag Race is like, if you want to, I'm not saying that that's the case, but I'm saying if you want to take that argument that there's blackface and there's trans face and there's gay face and there's whatever, then by that token, RuPaul's Drag Race and drag queens in general are like the single most offensive thing on the planet to anybody who's trans, which we know isn't true. A lot of trans people find that content enjoyable, but I think it's again, it's not so much about person A playing the role of person B. It's more about the intention behind it and the context and the delivery of it. So blackface is offensive because it's white people making a mockery of black people and playing up racial and ethnic stereotypes. That's why I think that while I would prefer more trans roles being filled by trans people, like my fucking boy Ian, I also realize the impracticality in certain circumstances for that to be the case. So moving on from that, the third big thing that people were freaking out about was, as I was reading about this, was there's a scene where, again, this is gory, she cuts her dick off at the end, and apparently it's played as this triumphant thing, and it's really over the top and intense, and like just talking about it makes me really uncomfortable. But again, you're feeling things, and if that's the end of the film and it's after this person has been abused and mistreated by their social peers and bullied and all that, then I see it as a crescendo that you can't really, without seeing the film obviously, there's nothing else you can put there, right? If you put something where it's like, oh, la-di-da, happily ever after, she transitions, she gets her hormones, and everything's great for her, and all her classmates are comfortable around her now, and everything's great. If you do that, then it's not a good film. It's not a good. It's not a good telling of the struggle that trans people face, right? But if you do have this really gruesome ending and you try to frame it as positive or negative, well, then everyone's like, oh, it's trans trauma porn. Oh, this fixation by cis and heteronormative people on the trauma of becoming, the trial and tribulation of becoming woman or becoming man. Then it's basically a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, there's no way in which you can present that where it's not going to upset people. And just like with strong female characters that are like Mary Sue's and they're super powerful like Captain Marvel, where yeah, it's great if you just want to sit down and watch some ultimate badass girl power thing happen, but there's not room in that for development or growth. And then again, the inverse of that is if you want to watch something like or read something, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, where it's a strong female character that goes through some tough shit, and there's loads of character development. There's loads of, I would say that the amount of facial expressions between Lisbeth Salander and Captain Marvel are the same, except one of them is developing their character and the other is not. And it's really interesting to me that you can have two women with a more or less flat affect with slight variation. You have to. The trick is you have to pay attention, right? But the fact that you can have these two people and they're both doing this very, opaque emotional presentation to as like a really guarded, shielded thing, and one of them can be full of character development, full of insight, and full of lore, and like you can really feel for this person, and the other one is kind of just like, oh yeah, she blew that person up. That's telling, and I think that's part of the issue that we're having with media is that most of the critics who are criticizing any given media are I hate to say it, casuals. They're fucking casuals. Like they don't read, and they don't watch obscure things. They don't listen to obscure things. They don't have a frame of reference. So when something like Girl comes along, or something like The Neon Demon comes along, or something like Blue is the Warmest Color, or Water Lilies, or Tomboy, or any number of other films that, or Melancholia is a good example. Like, that's something that people aren't, they don't, it's not that they're not ready for it per se, it's that they don't have a frame of reference. They don't, all they know is like Ocean's 11, Michael Bay, Expendables, like that's their frame of reference for television. So when they see something that makes them feel something, they don't know how to deal with it, because people in this country, especially younger people, are not as emotionally mature as they should be given their age bracket. And they're being shown up by a bunch of younger people from other countries, and that makes them feel some type of way on some level. Let me see. I think we covered the three main things. The other main reason that I'm really like uncomfortable about what probably the biggest reason, the number one reason I'm uncomfortable about watching it isn't the gore or the nudity. It's the fact that I'm worried I will empathize too much with the character, because whenever I watch a foreign film, and it's about like coming of age, or it's about a character who is like finding themselves or being bullied, boy or girl, really, I find myself empathizing so well and so much with the person. I end up feeling depressed or sad, right? Like it's a testament to the acting quality and the script and the production and all these things. But you, I'm worried that I'm going to watch this and there's going to be like the bullying scene or whatever. I'm going to be like, wow, that really grinds my gears and upsets me. And then I'm going to be thinking about all day how this person's being bullied for being different. And then I'm going to think about how I am bullied for being different. And it's going to be this whole thing that just like takes up all this emotional real estate, when I need as much of that as I can these days to handle everything else that's been going on. Um, if you have any questions, comments, put them in the comments section of the video. I kind of want to have like an actual interaction, like a back and forth discussion with you guys about this film before I watch it, and then when I watch it and do the after video, I want to also have discussion there, because this is something that this isn't going away. Like this new way of looking at, well, not a new way, but this more adventurous way of looking at things, and this way of telling stories about people who are more real as characters than characters that we're used to dealing with. This is not going anywhere. This is going to increase, and we need to collectively learn how to handle our emotions and be able to digest this in a way that's healthy and additive, if that's possible for this movie or any other movie or TV show. And that's another thing. Like that's something you can debate, whether or not this is a good thing or it's a bad thing or it misrepresents. But yeah, so that's all I had to say. Give me your thoughts in the comments, and I will watch this at some point and make the next video.